The idea of a US strike on Iran, it kind of feels like it's always bubbling just under the surface in global politics, right? But what would actually happen the day after? Let's explore the potential fallout of a major military escalation.
And that's the big question, isn't it? What if the US strikes Iran? There are just no easy answers here. The consequences could ripple out across the entire globe in ways we probably can't even predict. You know, the interesting thing is the initial targets are pretty predictable. We're talking Revolutionary Guard bases, missile depots, maybe some nuclear facilities. But the outcome? That is a complete unknown. The possibilities range from the very optimistic all the way to the absolutely catastrophic. So let's walk through 7 distinct scenarios. First up, Scenario 1. This is the hopeful outcome, the best-case scenario that some policymakers might be crossing their fingers for, a military strike that actually triggers positive change.
So in this perfect world scenario, the U.S. launches clean, surgical strikes. They hit their targets, neutralizing the regime's leadership, but with minimal civilian casualties. The government then just crumbles, and after a short period of uncertainty, Iran transitions peacefully to a democracy and rejoins the world stage. Sounds pretty good, right?
Well, history suggests we should be cautious. Just look at the track record. Recent Western interventions in places like Iraq, Syria, and Libya have pretty much always led to chaos and instability. So as appealing as this hopeful outcome is, it seems highly unlikely.
Okay, so if a swift transition to democracy is probably off the table, what's a more realistic possibility? Let's look at Scenario 2, what we can call the Venezuelan model. This is where the regime survives the initial attack, but it's left dramatically weakened.
To really get this scenario, you have to understand the immense U.S. military presence that's already surrounding Iran. It's effectively a ring of firepower, and it's exerting constant pressure.
And I mean, just look at the scale of this. You've got the massive Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which is the hub for air operations. You have the naval base in Bahrain, home to the Fifth Fleet, plus all the other facilities in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. We're talking about a truly formidable force.
And this brings us to that Venezuelan model. The idea is the Iranian regime doesn't collapse. Instead, it's so constrained by this overwhelming military pressure that it's forced to moderate its policies to essentially back down. This is a plausible, if not guaranteed, outcome.
All right, let's move on to a third outcome. What if the regime does collapse, but what fills that power vacuum is something far from democratic? If a military takeover happens, it almost certainly won't be Iran's conventional army stepping in. The real power lies with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. These guys are deeply embedded in every part of the country, and they would be the ones to seize control. You'd basically be swapping a theocracy for a military junta.
Now we're going to shift gears. We've been talking about what happens inside Iran, but let's talk about the scenarios where Iran doesn't just take the hit. This is when Iran strikes back, and they've been very clear that they will.
This quote says everything you need to know. Iranian officials have stated explicitly that they are ready to respond to any attack. This isn't just a threat, it's a core part of their entire defense doctrine.
And they have a whole menu of targets to choose from. They could lash out at U.S. bases in Qatar or Bahrain, or target regional allies like Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, or the UAE. And even with the most sophisticated air defenses, some of those missiles would likely get through, and that would escalate the conflict dramatically.
But Iran's retaliation might not just be military. They hold a powerful economic weapon, control over one of the world's most critical choke points.
Just think about this number for a second. Roughly a quarter of all the world's sea-traded oil and gas passes through the narrow Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption there sends massive shockwaves through the entire global economy.
And this isn't just a theory, it's happened before. During the tanker war back in the 1980s, Iran laid sea mines in the strait, and it caused total chaos for global shipping until Western navies had to come in and clean them up. They have the ability and the history to do it again. It's a desperate move for sure, but it is possible.
And this leads us to what is, frankly, a nightmare scenario for the U.S. Navy. It's a scenario that plays on Iran's asymmetric strengths.
Iran has spent years practicing what are called swarm tactics. The idea is to take an advanced U.S. warship and just overwhelm its defenses with a massive, coordinated attack of explosive drones, speedboats, and torpedoes, all hitting at the same time.
This quote from a U.S. Navy captain in the Gulf really underscores how serious this threat is. Despite all the amazing technology on these ships, the sheer volume of a swarm attack is a commander's absolute worst fear.
And if a swarm attack actually worked, if Iran managed to sink a U.S. warship, the political fallout would be catastrophic. It would be a profound national humiliation, echoing that failed hostage rescue mission in 1980 that haunted the Carter presidency.
And finally, we arrive at the seventh and most dreaded scenario of them all: total state collapse.
This is just a cascade of chaos. The regime collapses, but nothing stable replaces it. Instead, long-suppressed ethnic tensions erupt. The country could descend into murderous violence and score settling, triggering a humanitarian and refugee crisis on a scale that's just unimaginable.
So when you lay it all out like this, it becomes pretty clear. It's easy to start an attack, but as these 7 scenarios show, it's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to control the outcome. So the real question isn't whether the US can win a military conflict with Iran, it's whether anyone can win the peace that follows.